Hey guys, welcome back. Well, in today's video, we are going to see how to process multiple files in a single Spring Batch step. As always, before moving to the code, we need to give you a context about the different types of files. For example, we have here text files, which can be, for example, a flat file. We have in flat files plain text, CSV, TSV, and so on. So, in order to process a CSV file or another kind of flat file using Spring Batch, mostly we use the flat file item reader. This helps us to process a single file. But now let's suppose that we receive every day 10 files. If we try to process all those files using the common flat file item reader, what will happen here is that each file will be processed separately. The question here is how to process all the 10 files located on our directory, as a single unit of work. What I mean is process all these files at once, just like one shot. So this is what we are going to see in this video. But before moving further, I would like to give you another example. So let's suppose that we are processing document files. A document file can be, for example, a Microsoft Word, a PDF, and so on. So let's suppose that we have here on our directory some PDFs. A common approach will be, for example, process the first file, the second, the third, and the last file. And all those files, when we process them, they will create a new job execution for each file that we have here. So that means that every single file will be processed in a different transaction. So far so good, guys. It's okay, It's okay to process like that. And it seems like it's a tasklet, right? We are processing each file as a single unit of work in a different transaction. So what is a tasklet? So a tasklet is just a simple Spring Batch interface used to perform a single task within a step. For example, we can use a tasklet to perform some database operations, like, for example, performing data cleanup, database migration, executing a store procedure, and so on. One can use also tasklet for establishing connection to external system or service. For example, sending an email, calling an external API, and so on. Another benefit of using tasklet is we can take advantage of Spring Batch listeners and perform some operations before and after a step or even a job. For example, set up directory, clean up temporary resources, and so on, right? We have done something like that. So tasklet is very important. We can do many things using tasklet. But let's suppose that we want to accomplish what I said here before. We want to process all these files, at once, in one shot, not like separately. So another alternative can be, for example, using the chunk-oriented processing. Let's see how the chunk-oriented processing works for our scenario. So let's take a look here, Let's suppose that we have here our directory and we have some PDFs. Remember, we use chunk-oriented processing, to process, let's suppose that we have a CSV file and we have hundreds and thousands, million lines, Very large file, and we are going to see how to process, any kind of file using chunk-oriented processing. So let's take a look here. We have here our directory, and in our directory we have some PDFs. You can think, for example, we have a file or very big CSV file or TXV file, But in our case, let's just use, for example, here PDF. So we have here this PDF. In chunk-oriented processing, so we are going to read the first PDF, we are going to process it, We are going to do the same for the second one, Read, process, and the third, until we reach, a chunk limit. Let's say that here in our case, the chunk size is 4, and we reach the chunk limit. So when we reach the chunk limit, we write all those files, that we have in our chunk, as a single unit of work. We are going to write all of them in the same transaction, So all those 4 files will be written in the same transaction. This is the very basic difference between chunk-oriented processing and the tasklet. So what we are going to do here, we are going to have here our directory. We will have some files. We are going to filter them, okay? And for each kind of file, we are going to apply a different type of approach, a different approach that Spring Batch offers us to process them, okay? But the main concept here is to process them as a single unit of work. So we are going to have our directory, we are going to have our Spring Batch application, we are going to pull the files that we have, okay? Let's suppose PDF, PNG, and so on, okay? And we are going to upload to another microservice. Let's suppose here a digital storage microservice, okay? So for this video, we are going to use the Java 21, okay? Because we are going to scale our Spring Batch application. So this is what we are going to do, guys. And now let's go to the code and we will come back to give you more explanation. So let's go. So guys, as always, let's start creating our project. So let's go to the start.spring.io. So let's choose our project will be a Maven project. The Java will be, okay, we are going to use also the Java 21. Let's create our group. Now the name of our artifact. So now in terms of dependency, as always, let's use Spring Batch. And also let's use the Spring Data JPA. And in case of our, let's say, database vendor, we are going to use MySQL. You can use the one that you prefer, okay? And also let's use the Lombok. So sometimes people ask me why we need, for example, Spring Data JPA. It's not just because we are persisting something in the database, but it's because the Spring Batch internally, if you think about the architecture of Spring Batch, you will understand the concept called by job repository. So job repository is where Spring Batch stores all the metadata related to a job, okay? So the job repository is very important concept, okay? So now that we have here our project, so let's just generate our project and I will be back soon. So guys, now we have here on our IntelliJ our project. The only thing that I have done here, I just add here the mapstruct, okay? The mapstruct here on our plugin, okay? The build plugin. I just had here the mapstruct, okay? Remember, we are using Java 21. You are free to use Java 17, okay? Don't use Java 11 or Java 8. Java 8, God. All right, guys. So now the first thing that we are going to do here, we are going to create our, let's say, our package where we are going to configure our job, okay? So let's call the package config. And as always, the first thing that we are going to do here, let's create our job. So it will be like import vehicle invoices. So the name of the job will be import vehicle invoices. As always, remember, as it's a place that we are going to create a lot of beans, okay, in order to configure our Spring Batch job, we need to use the correct Spring annotation, okay, which is the configuration. So take a look at the configuration in order to understand what does configuration do. But actually, configuration is the place that we declare one or more beans, okay, as you can see here. So now that we have it like that, I think the first thing that we need to do, we need to know which, let's say like which CSV or which resource, okay? We need to know which resource we are going to process, okay? In our case, we are going to process some CSV, which will be the first case. It will be Tesla invoices, okay? That CSV. So here we are going to create our CSV. I'm just gonna copy and paste, okay, the CSV in order to make this video very short, okay? So this is what we have here, okay? So we have a file, we have 1,000 lines. So the first thing we have here is reference number, the model, the type, the customer full name, okay? As we can just see here, okay, we have some cars here, okay, which represent, let's say, our Tesla invoice. And the customer name are the, let's say, I just took here from our YouTube channel, okay, our subscribers. So now that we have here our file, okay, it's the time that we need to create our flat file item reader, okay? So in that order, let's just create here our flat file item reader. So our flat file item reader actually will read, let's say it like vehicle, okay, DTO. Let's just say like a vehicle flat file. So now that we have here our vehicle flat file item reader, we need to create our vehicle, okay. As I'm using Java 21, okay, I'm going to use the record. Record is very nice type to declare your DTOs or any immutable classes, okay. Even I'm using I have been using records in order to provide or to create some, let's say, value object. If we are talking about DDD, if you want to know about DDD microservice, we have some videos also related to this topic. So now let's create it. So we are going to create it in a package. Let's say just the package name will be also DTO, okay. So as we can see, we have here a new package and we have it like that. Let me just split it to this side. So if we take a look here, okay, on our first column, okay, in our CSV, I understand it as a number. So in that order, I'm just going to use here an integer. Let's say integer. So here we specify the reference number. And now let's specify the other fields. So let's just close this, okay. And if we take a look here, this is our record. We don't need anything such a canonical constructor and so on, okay. We will leave it like that. Now here on our job, so we can just, for example, here refactoring in order to be more clear, okay, import vehicles, invoices, job, config, okay, because we are configuring our job. Let's start implementing our flat file item reader. So let's use the builder. Let's use here the vehicle DTO. Now, the first thing that we need to do, we are going to specify a name. The name is very important, okay, because it will be like a key name. If we set, for example, save state, I'm going to specify here, for example, save state. What is save state? It's very nice when we deal with, let's start restarting a job, okay? So this save state, we are going to specify if it will save the state, okay, for restarting propose. So we specify save state is false, okay? So when we specify save state is false, the name is not required anymore, okay? Later I will explain you why we need save state, but for now, just remember, save state is nice when we are dealing with a restartable job, okay? The job that can be restarted, okay? So now that we have it like that, I think the first thing that we need to do, we need to, before start reading or mapping our, let's say our tokens, okay? These tokens here, okay? We are going to map all these tokens, but remember we have here the header, okay? So we need to skip the header, right? So in that order, if we go here, we now specify, for example, lines to skip, okay, which will be 1 because we are going to skip the first line, okay. And then, for example, we can start, for example, say, okay, our file will be delimited, okay. And now the delimiter, we need to specify how we are going to, how our file has been delimited. So if we take a look here, okay, we are delimiting our file using semicolon. So in that order, let's put here, okay, delimited is a semicolon. And also now this is the time that we need to specify the names, okay. So in our case, the name will match all these names, okay. So in our case, we can just specify, for example, here the name, okay, which the first one will be the reference number, the next one will be the model. Now we need to specify the target type, okay, which type we are going to use in order to hold, okay, these names. So the type that we are going to use is our record, okay, that we have created here, vehicle DTO. So if you are not using Java 17 or Java, let's say 21, okay, you can use an immutable class. So now let's use the target type and let's just specify here the vehicle DTO.class. And yeah, I think we can now create here as a build. Another thing that I would like to tell you guys, as we can see here on our file, we have some comments. So we have this hashtag which represents a comment in our file. okay? So in order to skip the comments, okay, we need to specify also, because Spring Batch has something that we can use here, some comments. So if you take a look, the hash is the default. Let's take a look here. As we can see, the default comment prefix is hash, okay? So for example, if we had here a comment as a dollar sign, okay, we will use here, for example, dollar sign, okay? So this is the way that we specify a comment, okay, in Spring Batch. So having it like that, this is our first step in order to create our flat file item reader. You can think, okay, but we have already an example related to reading a file. Guys, remember, we are going to read not only one file, okay? We are going to read multiple files, okay? Later we are going to add more files here. So we are going to read all these files as a single unit of work, all those files in the same job execution. So we can keep playing with flat file item reader. We can explore a little bit more. So for example, let's suppose that we want to add a property. Let's just get, for example, the strict. Strict, the default value is true, okay? So it means that if we are using this flat file item reader and the actual file does not exist, it will throw an exception. So another thing that you can add, for example, in your case, let's suppose that you want to add, let's say, I think distance limit, which is very nice also, that will tell us, okay, so you are giving me this name, right? Reference number. But let's suppose that we have here name like references numbers, okay? So the distance limit will actually give you the ability to, let's say, okay, to make it more flexible, okay? So you will give a distance between misspelling here. So for example, yeah, so if we take just a look here, documentation, okay, you will understand that it configures the maximum tolerance between the actual spelling of field name and the property's name, okay? So this one here, okay, and this one. The other thing that you can add, for example, is the skipped callback, okay? The skipped lines callback, you can just add a callback for the lines that you are skipping, but we have already a video about the skipping lines and so on, okay? So you can just find it on our channel. Now let's start creating our step. If you remember, guys, a Spring Batch application is composed by a job is composed by a step. So now the next thing that we need to do is start creating our step. So in that order, let me just create here the step. So now let's give the name of our step, for example, like import vehicle step. With the new Spring Batch, we will need the job repository. If you remember, guys, the job repository is the repository where the Spring Batch application will store all metadata related to our job. So it will need these. The step needs also a platform, let's say platform transaction manager, okay? Let's just name it like transaction manager. And now we can just, for example, here return a new step builder like this, which will need a name. So let's just give a name. So just like this, and now let's give the job repository. So now we need to specify, for example, what we are going to read here. In our case, we are reading a vehicle, okay? And we are going to write also a vehicle for now. And we are going to specify that our step is a chunk-oriented processing, okay? It's a chunk step. So the first thing that we need to give here is, for example, the chunk size, okay? Let's just put here 100. And the next thing that it needs is the transaction manager. So the transaction manager actually is the one, okay, that we have just specified here. So now we can, for example, now start adding here, for example, our reader. And in this case, we can just say, okay, we are going to use the flat file, okay, the vehicle flat file item reader. And for example, if we have the processor, for example, a processor receives an item, okay, and we can just, for example, here we can just log, let me log here, log that info, Okay, let's say, for example, we are going to say, okay, just like this, processing, okay, the item. And then we specify here the item, like this. And yeah, we can return the item. So for example, later we can implement or we can create the actual processor, okay, because it's not a good let's say it's not following the best practices, okay, because later we cannot test the processor if we do like this, okay. But for now, let's just leave it like that. So we need to import the Lombok Self4j, okay, in order to actually activate here the log. And now that we have here our processor, I think we can just do here a refactoring, and let's extract here to a method. So just like this. So this is our processor, just like this here in line. Okay, now we have our processor. And now the next thing, we need also the writer. Okay, so writer, as always, is the same. Okay, it just receives some items. So in that order, we can just, for example, log for now. Okay, we are just going to log for now here. Let's say writing items. Okay, and here we specify the items. And yeah, I think it's okay. Let's just call the build in order to build our step. And here also the same, we can just put it like this. Let's just annotate it as a bin, as always. And now let's go back to our slide. Now we just need to create our job. So in order to create our job, you guys, you already know, we just need to create here a job. So in that order, let's just say, okay, import a new job builder, okay, which will receive a name. We can just give the same name, okay, that we have here. And next thing that it will receive also is a job repository. So in that order, let's just inject here a job repository. So in that order, let's use here the repository. And yeah, a job needs a step. So in our case, the first thing that we are going to do here, we are going to add here an incrementer, okay? The one that we are going to choose here is the run ID incrementer, okay? What does it mean? So every time when we run this job, okay, it will increment, okay, the job ID. And now we need to specify the start of the job. As you can see, it can receive a step or a flow or job decider. In our case, we are going to receive a step. So in that order, let me just put it here, okay? So we are going to receive here as argument of this method, okay, our step. And then, yeah, I think we can just, for now, build, okay? And now let's annotate it with a bin, okay, with a bin. So this is very simple in order to create a Spring Batch, let's say a Spring Batch job. But for now, we need a mean to trigger this job, okay? Because if we run this application like that, it will start the job and will end the job. So in that order, we need to use, for example, Spring Batch that I think is job that enable. Yeah, we are going to say false, okay? And now that we have it like this, we can for now create here our schedule, okay? So like this. So let's just create here a new class called by job trigger. Actually, this job trigger will be the one that will invoke, okay, our job, okay? So how we are going to invoke our job? We are going to use a schedule, okay? So in that order, let's just put here at enable scheduling, okay? So we need to enable the scheduling. So now that we enable the scheduler, let's just create here as a component. For now, let's just use here require hours constructor, and yeah, require hours constructor. So now the first thing that we are going to use here, we are going to inject. Why do I need the required args constructor? Because I'm going to inject our job, okay, our job launcher, which is a Spring Batch, okay, as we can see, job launcher, which is a Spring Batch class that will allow us to launch our job, okay. And the next thing that I'm going to inject here, remember guys, required arg constructor is a long block annotation, okay, that will allow us to inject our, let's say, fields here, okay, as dependency, okay, as this is the constructor injection, okay, when we talk about dependency injection. So now let's use the job, because in order to launch a job, we need the job launcher and the actual job. So for example, if we have two jobs, okay, now I have to specify the name of the job, okay, so this one here. But as we have only one job, I don't need to specify, because Spring Batch will scan anything that is a job, okay. So that's why I'm just leaving it like that. So now the next thing that we need to do is to, for example, launch, okay, launch job, okay. We are going to launch our job periodically, because we are going to use, let's just put here, for example, now, okay, the scheduler, okay, we are going to use the schedule. So in that order, let's use here a cron expression. So if you understand, guys, if you want to understand about the cron expression, I will give you the link. Oh, let's just go here, okay, the site. So if we just go here, okay, we can see that we can create our cron expression. So if you don't know, if you don't understand how to create a cron expression, just come here and you try to read a little bit, okay, and you will understand. So in that order, let's just create here our cron. Let's say second, minute, hour, girl, one. So guys, if you want to understand, okay, how the cron expression works, okay, you can, for example, read the documentation, or you can, for example, visit the site here, okay. So the site is very nice, where you can, for example, see more information about how to generate your cron. For example, you can run our, we can run our, let's say, Spring Batch application every 30 seconds, okay. So in that order, let's just put here, for example, like this for now, or like this, okay, every 30 seconds. So now this is where we are going to put the things. So for now, the first thing that we need to do, let's just add here self4j. Let's log, for example, here something in order to show us that we are going to start our job like this. Now we need to start creating our job parameter. I'm gonna explain for you guys, okay, what is the job parameters. So if we take a look here, okay, if you remember guys, if we take a look here, we can see, okay, the job parameter. So you can read a little bit more about the job parameter, but actually the job parameter represents the parameters that we use, okay, in order to launch this job, okay. So let's put it in practice. So let's just instantiate here. Let's use the job parameters builder, and now let's use here, for example, job parameter. The first thing that we are going to add as our parameter is the key, okay. So as always, I like to put here the date, because it will show us the uniqueness, okay. And yeah, the next thing that we need to do is just, for example, instantiate here the date, okay. So it will, because I want to put a parameter, okay, that is unique, okay, for every single time that we are going to launch our job, okay. As we put here a new date, maybe sometime we're gonna have the same parameter, but okay, let's just leave it like that. So now we can use, for example, the job launcher, okay, in order to run our job. So the job launcher receives this job launcher, okay, which is the interface that we use in order to control and launch our job. This is very important interface, is the one that we are going to use in order to launch our job, okay. So we are going to launch our job, and it needs the job parameter, okay, just like this. So this is job execution, and it's complaining because we need to handle the exception. But for now, I think we can just use the Lombok sneaky throws as it's a checked exception, just like this. Yeah, once we launch our job, maybe we can just, for example, log here, okay? Job finished with the status, and let's get the job execution status. Yes, okay, just like this. No, it should be exit status, not status. Yeah, exit status. So because the status can be, for example, running or something like that, and here we need the exit status. So now that we have here our job like this, and we have here our files, okay, now let's try to run our job in order to see what's gonna happen here. Okay, so now this is very nice, guys. It's failing because we don't specify the data source. Okay, man, Spring is nice. Okay, let's see. Nowadays with Spring, okay, we can just, for example, create here a file. Let's say just docker compose, okay, .yaml, and here in this docker compose is the place that we can, for example, specify our let's say data source or anything that our application would use. Okay, so in that order, I'm just going to use here, for example, database. Okay, let's put it like that, and I'm going to specify the image. In our case will be MySQL. Okay, let's say the latest. Okay, just like this. We can specify also the port. Okay, if you remember, I've been using MySQL like every single day. Okay, so I know the port is like this, and yeah, we can do anything. Okay, if you understand the Docker Compose, so we can, for example, here add the environment. Okay, and in the environment, we can specify, for example, let me see, yeah, like my MySQL root, let's use it like password, and we can also specify the database itself. So just like this, the password will be root, the database will be vehicle all DB, just like this. Okay, just an example. So this is very nice, guys. We add here in our class path. Remember, we are not specifying here anything. We just add in our class path a Docker Compose file, okay? And now the next thing that we need to add here is, for example, the Spring, let's say the Spring boot Docker Compose feature, okay? So if we go just here, okay? So we just go here and we grab, okay, the dependency, okay? And let's go back to our project. Here on our dependencies, we just add the dependency, reload, okay, in order to get the dependencies. So now remember, guys, before we had here this problem because we didn't specify the data source. Now we can just run our application and boom, oh, nice. I need just to run my Docker just like this. The Docker is starting. So as we are, for example, testing and adding here the Docker Compose file, we are going to boost our productivity. So this is very nice, right? Let me just see, okay, now the Docker is running, okay? The next thing that we need to do is just running our application. Just like this, guys, as you can see, okay, just like this. It's starting the container. It will download the images. Remember, maybe we're gonna have some exception because we didn't specify here in our item reader the file. So as we can see, the application has started. It's using the Docker Compose. Amazing. Now let's see if our let's say job trigger will launch our job in 30 seconds. We have some exception here. Okay, bad grammar. Okay. Okay, so we have this exception actually because we didn't, as we can see now it's saying, okay, the table does not exist, okay, but the data source has been provided by the Docker file. Man, Spring is amazing. So the next thing that we need to do, because it's saying that the job instance, remember guys, it's complaining because the job instance, the batch, as we can see, batch, this is the name of our database, right, that we specify here, right? But it's telling us, okay, in this database, okay, there is not the table batch job instance, which is when we talk about the batch job instance, we are talking about the all those metadata, okay, that job repository, all those tables that job repository. So in that order, let's just go here. Let's say, okay, now Spring JPA that hibernate auto is create. I think it's like that, create drop. We need to specify Spring batch, okay, JDBC initialize schema is equal always. So as we can see now, let's wait some seconds, and now, okay, now we got there, guys. So it's saying that, okay, fail to initialize the reader, and now it's telling us fail to initialize the reader. Okay, the input must exist. Now this is the place that we need to start, okay, playing. Okay, so what we are going to do here, so as we want to read all, let's say all files, okay, that we have here, let's put here one more, let's say here 2, let's put here, for example, 3. So now we have 4 files, right? And yeah, we need to read all those files, because if we want to read one file, we can just, for example, here in flat file item reader, say for example, and we can just put, for example, here new class path resource, and we specify here data that, for example, this one Tesla that CSV, okay? And yeah, so if we do something like this, specifying the resource, okay, it will read our resource, okay? So let's just wait some seconds because we have scheduled our job, okay? Okay, as we can see, guys, okay, it reads our first file, okay, and it completes, okay? Now, this is what we don't want, right? Because we want to process all files that we have in our directory, okay? So in that order, I like this practice here. Let's just put it like this. Now, this is the place that I like to put, for example, let's say input that folder, that vehicle. It will be, for example, data. So let's just say all. Now, these mean all. These mean all files. Okay. So, for example, if we have here another file, let's say, for example, Mercedes.txt. Okay, this file also will be read, but we don't want that, right? We want to read only, let's say, CSV files. So in that order, we just put it like that, CSV. So now let's go back to our job config. Okay, let's go back here. This is the place that we need to, for example, let's just put here, let's use the resource. Guys, remember, we have different resources here. This is the org spring framework.core.io, okay, this resource. So here we are going to say, we are going to receive an array of resources, okay, where we get these resources. So let's use the spring the annotation, okay, the bin factory annotation, which is the value, okay, remember, not the long block, but, and let's use this expression here. So what we are going to put it here. So having it like that, let's first try to, for example, okay, as you can see here, we just receive resource, only one resource, okay. This is where we need to start thinking, okay, how can we read multiple files from an input directory? So Spring Batch offers, okay, let's just put here, okay, we have here a flat file item reader. Let's just put here, for example, we need to use another class called by multi resource item reader, okay, this one here, multi resource item reader. So this multi-resource item reader will actually receive the same stuff that we are receiving here. Let's just put it like this. Let's give here some space. So in order to instantiate our multi-resource item reader, let me just specify here like this. We just need to, for example, specify here the resources. I think it's not nice to do like this, okay. We can use the builder, okay, and now we can use the resources. So what is resources? We have the resources here, right? So we specify the resources, and then we set a name. I think the names should always be the first thing that we put, okay. So as here also, I like to put it like this, okay. So we specify the name, vehicle resources reader. Now we need to delegate, okay. What we are going to delegate here is a type of resource aware item reader item stream. So if we see, for example, here, okay, we can think, okay, what is a resource aware, okay. So any class that implement resource aware can be flat file item reader, JSON item reader, LDIF, okay, reader. It's nice for LDAP, okay, security stuff, and so on, okay. So that's why if we specify here, for example, our vehicle, this one here, okay, our flat file item reader, it will work, okay. And now we can, for example, just say the build, okay. So as a good practice, okay, programming to interface, we can, for example, put here, okay, instead of flat file item reader, we can just put it as a resource aware item reader item stream, okay. And now we then put here the concrete class. So now let's test, okay. Now before testing, okay, we need to give, as you can see, we are using vehicle flat file item reader, but vehicle flat file item reader has been delegated here in our multi-resource item reader, okay. So in that order, let's remove that, okay, and then let's use the resource item reader, okay, to remove, okay, here the resource. Now the resource will be provided by the multi-resource item reader. So in that order, let's do something, guys. Let's do something. So every single file has 1,000, okay, and 202 lines, as you can see here. If we go back here in the last file, every single file has this. We are going to read all those files in one shot or as a single unit of work. Let's just, for example, create here, let me say here, listeners. Let's just put in singular, okay. Let's create here our custom job execution, which will implement job execution lister. And we can just put, for example, here as a component, let's say here we are going to log some stuff. So here in our custom job execution lister, what we are going to do here is we are going to count, okay, how many lines we have read, okay, after the job execution. okay? So in that order, let me just, for example, here override the method, okay, after job, okay? So here, what we are going to do, actually, what we are going to do, as we have here, okay, the job execution, we are going just to see, okay, how many lines we have read from job execution. As you guys may remember, a job contains step, and step contains the reader, processor, and writer. I'm repeating it always because we need to keep it in our minds, okay? So I'm just going, I know that we only have, let's go here, I know that we only have one step, okay, in our job. So that's why I'm just going to get, okay, get, as you can see, job execution contains steps, okay, step execution. So step execution, I'm just going to find any, let's just find first, okay, then if present, so let's just say here, if the step execution is present, what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to take, okay, step that get, for example, write count, okay? How, guys, you need to play with Spring Batch, man. You need to play with Spring Batch. It's very easy. So I know that a step, okay, contains reader, write, and so on. So I can just get how many lines I have written, right? Get write count. So in that order, let's just use here info, okay, lines. I think we don't need like this. We can just use, for example, something like this, and let's use it in our string format, okay? So string that format, it's pure Java, okay? And now here we specify, okay, the word count, oops, the write count, okay? So just like that. Now that we have here our custom job execution listener, guys, go back in our channel, we have video about the listeners, okay? So now that we have here our custom job execution listener, let me just inject it here, okay? Private final, custom job execution listener, okay? And if you guys remember, okay, you can, for example, inject like this, auto wire, okay? But I don't like this. Let's use the constructor injection, okay? Instead of creating here our constructor, let's just use the Lombok, okay? Required, okay, required as constructor. So, and then we can just specify here in our job the listener, okay? And let's use our custom job execution listener. So what I'm trying to show you guys here is that we are going to see, for example, it's 1000, okay, 2, 3, 4000, okay, 4000 and something, okay? It will show us that we are reading, okay, all those files in one shot, okay? So let's just go here. All right, so guys, as you can see, let me finish the job, okay? As we can see, let's go back here on our logs, okay? The job has written 4,800 lines, which means, okay, that we have read all those 4 files. And remember that every single file, okay, contains 1000, okay? This is very nice, guys. This is very nice. And we can keep playing, okay? I have a good day today, so let's go. Let's move again. So what can we do here? Let me exit the presentation mode, and you can just take a look what we have done here. We specified, right, our directory, and we said, okay, we are going to read everything that in this directory, that the extension is CSV. The only thing different here from the previous videos is that we have created our flat file item reader, which is a type of resource aware item reader, okay? So if you just leave it like a flat file item reader, it's okay also, okay? I'm just playing with you guys in order to make it more challenging. So we specify our flat file item reader. Then as flat file item reader, just read one file per time, okay? We wrapped, okay, the flat file item reader into a multi-resource item reader. So we create our multi-resource item reader. We specified the folder that contains the resources. We delegate our reader, and then we start, for example, processing it, okay? Because we create here our step. So we have our job, we have our custom job execution listener, which actually the only thing that does is just telling us the number of lines that we have written. So you can just, for example, go to database, okay, try to connect yourself to database, and you will see this information. But now let's move to another topic. Let's go. So what we are going to do here is something very nice. So as we are processing, let's suppose that we have 1,000 millions lines to process, and we want to scale before this new Spring Batch. And remember, guys, I'm using Java 21, okay? Before this Spring Batch, we could, for example, scale our Spring Batch by providing a task executor, okay? A task executor. And before it, we use also the throttlet, which is deprecated now, okay? Just go to our channel, okay? You will see all those stuffs. So when we talk about virtual threads, we are thinking about the lightweight threads, right? If you remember, guys, everybody was telling us about the project Loom and everything that they were doing about the virtual threads. And now we have virtual threads in our Java 21. So in that order, in order to scale our Spring Batch application, we can also use the virtual threads. So in that order, I think we can go here, okay? I don't know, it's becoming a messy. You can later think how you're gonna organize it. So we are just going to use the virtual thread task executor. This is actually, let me just go to presentation mode. And what we want to see here, okay, it's project. So let's just go here. So we can use, as you can see, guys, it's from Spring Framework. So we can use the virtual thread task executor. So and we can just, for example, instantiate here, okay? New virtual thread task executor. The only thing that it needs is a thread name prefix. So the thread name prefix can be, for example, let's say custom thread, and it should finish with hyphen. So this is the way that we instantiate our virtual thread. I think we can, for example, annotate it as a bin, okay? And now, for example, here, in our step, we can just use a virtual thread, okay? I think we can just, for example, remove it, okay? Because we don't want to use it anywhere. And let's just use here the task executor, okay? Which is pointing, okay, for this one, okay? Remember, now we're gonna have multiple threads. We are going to scale this application, and we are going to see in our console. So in that order, let's run our application once again. Let's wait some seconds. I will edit the video because no one will wait 30 seconds. And boom, okay, we got an exception. We got exception. Exceptions are nice. So it was reading the file, as we can see here, in different threads. So thread 0, 3, and so on. Every single line was okay. But then we got an exception. Okay. So, guys, remember, we have this flat file item reader, right? And we have also this multi-resource item reader. So, in order to use multi-thread, we need something thread safe, right? So this is what we are going to do here, okay? In order to use, this is very nice, okay? In order to use concurrency, or in our case, multi-thread processing in Spring Batch, every single component of our reader or writer, depending on the place that you are scaling your Spring Batch application, you need to think about thread safe, because this flat file item reader is not thread safe. I think if we go here, okay, I think if we go here, okay, we can see this reader is not thread safe, okay? So how can we solve it, okay? So let's go, let's start solving this issue. So guys, yeah, let's go. let's make this multi-resource item reader, okay, thread safe, because if not, we are going to have some concurrency problems. But to solve is very easy. It's very simple to solve some kind of problem like that. So let's run once again our application and let's try to understand the exception itself. So the exception is not very clear, okay, but as we can see, okay, this thread, the virtual thread is causing here problem, okay. Resource must be open before it can read, and like they are just having concurrency problem. So for example, if we just go here, okay, the same job, if we just comment this line and we execute our application, we are going to see actually it will finish with success. Just go, okay, yeah, as you can see, it's working, okay. I'm just gonna finish the job, and if you take a look here, every single line of our file, okay, has been processed in a single thread, as you can see here. So this thread was processing and writing. So now we need to solve the problem related to concurrency. And yeah, so let's take a look here. We have already our config. It should be job config, but anyways, so the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to create here just a new folder, okay, a new package called by reader, and here we are going to create our class which will allow us to make our multi-resource, okay, this one here. Let me show you guys the class that will make our multi-resource item reader thread safe. It's not thread safe, as well as, for example, the flat file, okay, item reader. Actually, the flat file item reader, okay, it's not thread safe. So let's go, let's create here our class. Like this, so it will receive any type, okay, and this one will implement the item reader. So now that we have it here, okay, let's just take a look at our functional interface, which is the item reader. So item reader as a functional interface, it provides only one method, right? This is the definition of functional interface. So the first thing that we are going to do here, we are going to override the method, right? Now the question is, how can we turn this method, right, this method here, the read, into thread safe method? Okay, so this is very basic Java keyword that we are going to use, which is the synchronized keyword. So it will ensure that only one thread can execute the synchronized code. Only one thread will execute, okay, this part of the code at a time, okay? So that's why we are using here the synchronized keyword. So now what we are going to do here, let's just provide here, for example, if you are dealing with multi-thread, okay, the old-fashioned way, we are just going to create here the lock. And now we are going to put here, okay, the lock, right? Now we need to specify, okay, what we are going to do here in this method, okay? In this method, we are going to return, let's say we need first here to specify that we are going to use the multi-resource item reader. What is multi-resource item reader? Multi-resource item reader is the one that we are going to use, this one that we are using here, the one that allow us to read multiple resources, okay, in a sequential manner, okay? So you can just read the documentation and you will understand. So we provide here multi-resource item reader, and yeah, here we are going just to say, okay, delegate, okay? So this is the one that we are going to use here. So let's just use delegate that read. So I think the next thing that we are going to do here also, let's just, for example, I think we can just, for example, set here a method. Let me see. Okay, public. It can be void. Okay, we are just going to set here a new method, which will be set resources, because we will need also to set here some resources, which actually will receive the resource. Remember, it should be the Spring resource, okay, which will receive the resources. Yes, so when we set the resource, it should also be synchronized. only one thread will actually execute this code at a time. So let's just put like this, and then we can just say, okay, delegate that set resources, okay, resource like that. And I think the next thing that we can do, for example, is those methods, okay, that we have here. For example, let me just say we have the read, right? We have also close, we have the open, okay, as you can see here, okay. Most of them, as you can see, they are not thread safe. So we are just going to do it here, okay. So for example, let's say void open. If you take a look what we have seen here, let's go back here. If we find the open method, okay, where is the open method? This is the read. Yeah, the open method receives a execution context, okay. So in our case, we are going to receive also here the execution context, just like this, okay. Now we create here. It will be also synchronized. We are going to apply also the lock here, and then we can just, for example, delegate here the open method, which will receive the execution context. So the last one should be, for example, we have open. I think we can, for example, also do it for close, right? Because we open and we close. So just like this, okay, this method here. What we are going to do here is the same. So in that order, public void, close, right? And then we do the same, synchronized, okay, the object, lock, right? And then we just delegate here the close one. So this is very simple way, okay, that allow us to create a thread safe reader, which in our case, the reader will be multi-resource item reader. So we have created here our reader, which will be thread safe. Now the next thing that we need to do, we just need to go, for example, here. Now let's just instantiate our reader. Multi-resource reader, thread safe. Let's just say here, multi-resource reader, which is a thread safe. It should receive something, okay? Because if you take a look here, okay, it will receive something, which in our case will be the vehicle, just like this. Then we start, for example, here, instantiate, for example, resource reader will be equal multi-resource thread safe reader. So if you remember, guys, now this is the place that we need to start setting here some properties. This is the place that we need to set here some properties. For example, set resources method that we have created, okay? So we are just going to use the resources. And for example, here, let me see, for example, multi-resource item reader. We can, yeah, I think this is all that we need, okay? Now, when we instantiate, as you can see that we have here this one, let me just put here as final. Actually, it will be like required as constructor. Now, when we instantiate it here, it will ask us to provide a resource, okay, a multi-resource item reader. So we just put here, right, this method here, which will be the multi-resource item reader, just like this. So we have here. And now the next thing that we need to do, we just need to return, okay, the multi-resource item reader, okay. Now that we have here our multi-resource item reader, which is thread safe, the next thing that we need to do, we need to specify it here, right? So here in our reader, we will not use this reader here, the default one, okay. We will use the one that we have created, which is the multi-resource item reader thread safe. Okay, so in that order, we can just remove this comment here, okay, in order to have our task executor. Our task executor actually will be virtual thread task executor. Just try to understand what is virtual thread in Java. So now that we have it like that, exit, okay, the presentation mode in order to make it, yeah, like this. And yeah, we have created here our multi-resource reader thread safe. So in that order, now that we have here, let's try to see if we are going to run this application without error. Okay, so let's run our application. So it's processing now. As we can see, now everything is working as expected. Okay, so we have processed all the 4,800 lines, okay, in multi-thread. Okay, so how can we see if it's actually working with virtual threads and multi-thread? So we can just take a look here. Okay, we have here some threads, some thread 45. Okay, so in this case, every single chunk has been processed in a different thread. Okay, so we can see here, okay, this thread 42 and so on. Okay, so if we, for example, we can increment here our, let's say, chunk size in order to get more efficiency, okay, while processing. But it's something that you can just play, guys. Okay, so next time we launch a job, there is no files anymore, didn't read any line, didn't write anything, and so on. Okay, so this is very simple, guys. In order to make a reader thread safe, okay, actually you need to, for example, in case of in case of multi-resource item reader and for example, the flat file item reader, you need to customize it. You need to wrap it into a thread safe class. Okay, so this is what we have done here, right? So far so good, it's working. We have here thread safe. So guys, this is very nice, very simple. So as you can see, every single chunk, okay, which our chunk size in our case, so let's go back here, in our case is 100, every 100 lines, okay, have been processed in a single thread. So for example, the first 100 line will be processed in let's say thread 1 or any thread, okay, and the next one also in a different thread. Okay, so you can, for example, increment the chunk size in order to play a little bit more about the scalability and and performance, right? This is very nice, guys, because we are dealing with resources, right? We are dealing with pure Spring Batch classes that are not thread safe, and we made them thread safe. Okay, so remember, this is very simple way to do that. Of course, we could improve. Always it's nice to improve our code, but for now we got here our multi-resource item reader, okay, in a thread safe manner. So now that we have it like this, before moving to, as you can see, we are processing CSV, right? And remember, guys, that we could, for example, as we can see here in our application property, we are just telling us, okay, so we are processing all in CSV. If you don't specify this, you know that it will try to process this corrupt file, okay? In an enterprise environment, okay, you should use another approach, which is Spring Batch integration. We have a video about the Spring Batch integration where we have our, let's say, a solution when we pull, okay, some files from a directory, okay? Go to that video. It's an amazing video, okay, and tell me how do you think about this, okay? So in order to proceed with our video, I would like to do something that actually I don't see too much. Let me just organize here the code. I think we need to organize this code, man. This code is a mess. We need to organize it. So we can organize later. So guys, the next thing that we can do before moving to, let's say, PDF, okay, now that we have here everything working with this kind of, let's say, flat file, it will be, for example, very nice to provide an example how to read a JSON file. We have implemented the CSV file, okay, which is the same as TXT and so on. Now we are going to do the JSON, and later we are going to do, for example, image and PDF.